significant improvement in AIDS prevention by circumcision also indicated that the earlier the child is circumcised, the more effective the circumcision is. And so, did God know more about prevention of infectious diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, than the doctors? Obviously, we know the answer. We know that in many, many studies, those who were circumcised were significantly less prone to have gotten the AIDS virus. And we also know that the earlier the circumcision, the more protected they were. And this would indicate a certain amount of protection to the individual who was circumcised. Now, I want to say something very, very clear. Sexual deviance is prohibited by the Torah. Jewish people are prohibited from going to prostitutes. They're prohibited from having homosexual relationships. We are also prohibited from having multiple sexual partners or sex before marriage. Human sexuality is for the purpose of procreation. And a child born out of love and commitment has a different type of environment. However, all commandments of the Torah, all of them, have some kind of physiological and psychological benefit to the individual. And this is seen by many, many studies. Now, I know you argue that the studies are faulty and that there are multiple studies. However, I did evaluate the articles in Wikipedia, and for the most part, most of the studies conclude that there's a significant benefit for circumcision for those who wish to prevent AIDS transmission. There are others who say there's no significant factor, but it's a question of whether it is highly beneficial or not so beneficial, or not beneficial enough to warrant the cost. But there is no opposite results. One of you indicated that Ethiopians have 88 times as much AIDS as one would expect. I don't know where you get your results from. I looked it up. People in Ethiopia, those who have AIDS, are primarily from poor areas, primarily from those who engage in prostitution or unprotected sex and have very poor hygienic activity. But there are less AIDS cases for the population, percentage-wise, than they have in South Africa. In South Africa, it's more than 10% of the population. And so, I don't know where you're getting your statistics from, but check them out, please. Another interesting thing about the scientific discoveries is that Muslim men who are more sexually active than others actually have less AIDS than other groups. The only reason for that is the fact that they're circumcised. Interesting to you. I also want to delicately approach a certain aspect of the transmission of AIDS. Initially, AIDS was gotten through some kind of contact with monkeys. The theory today is non-sexual, but that they ate the flesh of the monkeys and somehow or other monkey flesh transmitted the virus to the humans. However, in the initial stages of the pandemic, AIDS was primarily seen as a disease of homosexuality and of needle taking dirty needles from an infected partner. Now, this transmission of AIDS vis-a-vis homosexuality, if you believe that the Torah is the blueprint of life, must have a source in the Torah. And indeed, we have in the Torah, in this week's Torah portion, a condemnation of homosexual activity. Two angels come to the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, commonly called Sodom and Gomorrah. And these two angels are invited to stay in the house of Lot, the nephew of Abraham. The entire city hears that there's these two handsome guys that are found in Abraham's, in Lot's house, and they demand to have them taken out to have sex with them. Of course, the people are stricken with blindness, and this leads to the destruction of the entire area, leaving the area totally desolate, filled with salt, known as the Dead Sea, which covers up the entire area. Now, a lot of you will scoff at this, but let's take a look at the Torah portion. There's an interesting discussion between the angels who come to destroy the city of Sodom and to save Lot, right before they send him away. And they say to Lot the following. They pressure Lot, saying, "Rise up, take your wife and your two daughters that are presently here in the house." He had two other daughters who were married. "Lest you will become consumed by the sin of the city." Now, the word consumption is the word called tisafeh. And there's a dot in the samach, one of the letters of the word tisafeh. And when I was told that the Torah has codes, I wanted to see for myself if there was a code for AIDS in this story of sodomy, Sodom and Gomorrah. And so I noticed that the word tisafeh, you will become consumed, utterly destroyed. The samach has a dot in it. That dot attracted me. And I tried to find a code. And indeed I found a code. I found from the samach, which stands for S, 33 letters later, I found a daled, which is a D. The 33 letters after that, I found a yud, which is an I. And 33 letters after that, I found an aleph, spelling the words AIDS. I will show you them on the camera, if you can see them. And it's in chapter 19, verse 15 of the book of Genesis. So if you can see the samach in tisafeh, right over there, you'll notice that 33 letters later, there's the daled of biyado. In verse 16, 33 letters after the daled is a yud from the word alav. And then in verse 617, there's an aleph, 33 letters later. The code 33 stands for the Hebrew word gal, which means to uncover nakedness. And that is the code word for things that are usually illicit. The word for illicit sex is called gilui, arayot. It's a form of the word gal, 33. And so the Torah is warning Lot, take your wife and your two daughters. Subsequently, his wife dies. His daughters are afraid that the world has ended and they must have sex with their father in order to have children. And Lot has sex, incestual sex, with his daughters. And the angels have said to him, take your wife, and if need be, your two daughters, but get out of town, lest you will be consumed by the sin of the city. Now, what is the sin of the city? Sodomy, homosexuality. And the consumption, the destruction of the sin of the city spells out AIDS.